We don't want communists in our country.
That sentence lasted less than 10 seconds, but by the time the speech ended, it had become the part everyone remembered. What's interesting isn't just what was said, it's why it was saved for the very end. Because if you rewind to the beginning, this wasn't presented as a political speech at all. It's easy to dismiss the opening as small talk about bad weather, but notice what's actually happening. Before Donald Trump says a word about America, history, or politics, he tells a story about the people standing in front of him. The lightning delay becomes more than a scheduling problem, it becomes evidence of commitment. The audience isn't introduced as spectators. They're introduced as people who refuse to leave. That's a subtle but effective way to begin. Shared inconvenience often creates shared identity. By the time the speech officially starts, the crowd has already been reminded that they endured something together. Whether it was only a storm or something more symbolic doesn't really matter. The emotional effect is the same. Political speeches often succeed or fail before the main argument ever arrives. If people feel they're part of the story, they're more likely to stay invested in where it's going. And that's worth remembering, because the message everyone will be talking about tonight hasn't arrived yet.
Good evening, America. If you think that was easy, it wasn't. And I want to thank everybody because they did the right thing. They saw lightning, and I said, there's no way if we have to speak in front of one person at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to be here. There's no way we can be deterred. And they estimated they had 375,000 people before everybody had to leave. And they now have 150,000 people. It's the craziest thing anyone's ever seen. At least. And I want to just thank you, and I feel so badly about some people. They left and they couldn't get back. But you're very special people, and we have a very special country. Thank you very much.
Here's where the speech starts doing something that isn't obvious on a first watch. On the surface, this sounds like a familiar Independence Day address. The Declaration of Independence, the Founding Fathers, the Revolutionary War, old flags, Saratoga, Yorktown. Almost every American president has reached for those symbols at one time or another. But pay attention to what those stories have in common. None of them are simply historical facts. Every example points to the same pattern. A nation confronting an existential threat, making extraordinary sacrifices, and emerging stronger because it refused to compromise on what it believed freedom required. Once you notice that pattern, another question naturally follows. Why spend so much time reinforcing it? Speeches are rarely just collections of facts, they're sequences. Each idea prepares the audience for the next one. That's why this middle section matters. It's not simply honoring the past, it's establishing a moral framework. Freedom is presented as something that survives only when people recognize a threat and decide it's worth confronting. At this point, the speech still hasn't named who or what that threat is today. But after several minutes of revolutionary history, the audience has already been primed to expect an answer.
Tonight we come together for one of the most joyous and glorious milestones of all time, and you know what that is, 250. The 250th anniversary, and I do have to say this. One of my very brilliant people backstage said, don't worry about it, sir. We can do it maybe next week. I said, it doesn't work next week. This is the big day. We want July 4th. We're not looking for July something else. Because this is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Nothing like it. For 2.5 centuries, our American republic has stood as the crowning achievement of human history. This country is the home of freedom. This is the land of liberty. And this is a flag that's the banner of the most extraordinary, most exceptional, most incredible nation ever to exist on the face of the earth. And we're doing better now than we've ever done before. No people have done more good, shown more courage, made more progress, righted more injustice, or achieved more greatness than you, the American people. For 250 years, the United States of America has been the hope, the promise, the light, and the glory among all of the nations of the world. All over the world, they try and be like us. Nobody can be like us, and with God's help, we will always be this or even better. We're going to be better. Here in our national mall, we're celebrating freedom's triumph over tyranny, liberty's conquest over oppression, and the enduring victory of the American spirit from the July 4th, 1776 to July 4th, 2026. Big dates. That's big dates. Two big ones. And tonight our country is stronger, freer, richer, safer, and prouder than ever before. But it all started with the miracle of history that lives forever in the heart of every single patriot. In Philadelphia, our founding fathers summoned the courage of giants and the wisdom of centuries to boldly proclaim these timeless truths. They declared that all men are created equal, that they are endowed with sacred, unalienable rights by the hand of our Creator, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In signing their names to the roster of freedom, those 56 patriots put everything at risk, stepped onto the stage of destiny, and seized a victory for the ages, and that's what it was. And this is an evening for the ages, I believe. This is something very special. This is bigger than if we didn't have the lightning blaring. We had lightning blaring, but this is bigger. Little more inconvenient, but it's bigger. I think in its own way, it's more beautiful.
That sentence lasted less than 10 seconds, but by the time the speech ended, it had become the part everyone remembered. What's interesting isn't just what was said, it's why it was saved for the very end. Because if you rewind to the beginning, this wasn't presented as a political speech at all.
From the beginning, we were a nation that lived by the motto, victory or death, and live free or die. 1 out of every 100 Americans gave their lives in the fight for independence. To remind us of who these heroes were and what they gave us, we are honored to have here tonight in the heart of our nation's capital one of the very first American flags ever to exist. Dating back to 1777, it bears the 13 stars and 13 stripes of the 13 states that declared independence on the 4th of July. There it is. This was the flag that flew victorious at Saratoga. And these are the real deals, too. These are the real flags. These are flags that have seen a lot. These were the stars and stripes that flew triumphant when the British waved the white flag of surrender at Yorktown. That was a big surrender. Nobody thought that was possible. They were the greatest power of the world, and they surrendered, and that was the beginning. Ever since, the entire world has been on notice that Americans will never let anyone take our freedom away. It won't happen. And all these talks from the communists, they haven't got a chance. Not even a chance. We don't want communists in our country.